We have lots to discuss here in today's video, including some offseason trade speculation involving the Toronto Maple Leafs and the New York Rangers, actually maybe even pulling off a deal together. We'll discuss the latest on that front. Plus, we learned earlier today the longtime Leaf president, Brendan Shanahan, and the Leafs have parted ways. We're going to talk about tonight what comes next for the front office for the Maple Leafs, what other changes we might see, and what's next for Shanahan. Is there a possibility he, along with another one or two other former NHL executives, could they land in Long Island with the Islanders? There's lots of talk and connections of Shanahan to that franchise. Plus, of course, could he lure one of the Leafs unrestricted free agents to Long Island with him? We'll discuss how that might work out. Plus, lots of action from the Stanley Cup playoffs, including the Oilers blowing a third period lead last night. And then tonight, the Hurricanes again come out flat against the Panthers and are getting embarrassed for the second straight game. All that and more coming up next. So welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. As I mentioned, we have lots to discuss here in today's video. Let's get started first with a recap of what's gone on lately in the Stanley Cup playoffs. Of course, last night we had Game 1 in the Western Conference Final between the Edmonton Oilers and the Dallas Stars. Everything was going well for the Edmonton Oilers. They were the more dominant team early on, had a really good first two periods, had a 3-1 lead going into the third period, but they ended up losing, not only losing, but losing by multiple goals. It was a 5-goal third period for Dallas, including an empty netter. But the big story here is an undisciplined Oilers team. I think to some degree, a little bit of embellishment on the Dallas Stars side. And then, of course, not great penalty killing from the Oilers. Great power play execution from the Dallas Stars. And in just a 5-6 minute span, completely turned the game upside down. And the Dallas Stars took that game, even though the deserved to win meter probably leaned more towards Edmonton in the grand scheme of the whole 60-minute affair. But at the end of the day, the Oilers can't have collapses like that if they're intending on repeating and going back to the Stanley Cup final. Essentially, like I said, there was 3 consecutive penalties that led to 3 consecutive power play goals by the Dallas Stars. 2 out of the 3, I would say, in my opinion, did involve a little bit of embellishment on the Dallas side. Mason Marchment, I will continue to call him out, is one of the biggest fakers in the league. And some of his teammates, in my opinion, are starting to pick up on it. I'm not saying they weren't penalties like the Duchesne one, for example, the high stick. I think that was a penalty, but I think it's a case where they could have considered calling an embellishment as well. And some of these, I just find that they feel a stick anywhere near them or in their midsection or anywhere near their upper body. They're just acting like soccer stars, and they're shot and they're dead, and then all of a sudden, penalties called. So it's not that the Edmonton penalties weren't penalties. I just think that there's a couple of occasions where I think Dallas did a good job at selling it, and they could have called it. Obviously, they didn't, and it kind of led to these power plays, and these power plays changed the game completely for both teams. Last year, the Edmonton PK was one of their biggest stories in their success. In Dallas's lack of power play ability, and because of that strong PK, was just a major difference in that series last year. And in Game 1, we've already got a major different story going on here with the Dallas power play having a field day, and the Edmonton PK just kind of falling apart. So Oilers blow it, Stars take advantage, 6-3 win, 3 power play goals, 1-0 series lead for Dallas. And then tonight, Game 2, it's not over yet. There's only a couple minutes left. It's 5-0 Florida. The Canes are getting completely outplayed and embarrassed here yet again. Goaltending hasn't been fantastic, but they're getting beat in many aspects of the game. Now, there was a goal that was scored by Aho, but it was called back for offside, and it was pretty clear. It was actually one of those ones that the line's been missed, but once you saw the replay, you're like, oh yeah, that's coming back. So Carolina is going to fall apart here. There's been some injuries in this game. We saw Sam Reinhart leave the game for the Panthers. We've seen Jarvis leave the game for the Hurricanes. So definitely some players getting banged up here. But it doesn't look good. This could be a short series if Carolina doesn't find something here. Be 14th consecutive games now in this round that they drop, which is a trend they need to stop if they're going to have any chance to stop the bleeding, so to speak. Now, a couple other quick notes, and then we'll get into the Brendan Shanahan Leaf stuff and then some potential trades. Jeff Blashill become the new head coach of the Chicago Blackhawks today. There is a new dedicated video on the channel from this morning when that news first broke. I think it's a pretty good hire. I mean, not to say that there couldn't have been other candidates that would be just as good, maybe better, hard to say, but I think Blashill does have a long resume that is have a more good than bad on it. Blashill, to me, will be one of those coaches, at least I think and hope, for Chicago's sake, that is having a lot more success and a lot better results the second time around. His first time as a head coach in Detroit was there from 2015 to 2022, and a lot of the issue was the roster, which is not his department, but I know there was some, I guess you could say, concern on deployment of younger players and whatnot. But at the same time, because I think the last few years he was there, coaches tend to be concerned for their jobs. They know they're hired to be fired, and they rely more on their veterans sometimes because they're trying to coach to win games to save their jobs. It's just that simple. They don't know how much time they have, and it can become problematic that way. But Blashill's been a coach for over 20 years. He's got 25 years experience on all different levels. He's won at various different levels, including the American Hockey League, where he was part of the Detroit farm system. 3 consecutive years in the Calder Cup finals, including taking one of the championships there. So a lot of those players that he was working with were, slowly graduating to the Red Wings at the NHL level too. So certainly, like I said, good resume. Then on top of that, he's got to learn from John Cooper the past 3 years, one of the best coaches in the NHL, the longest tenured coach as well. So all in all, I have hope and optimism for this hire. I hope it works out. He does have a good resume. I understand some fans aren't completely thrilled with it because there are maybe some other names on the market that may appear to be better coaches, but not too many of them are going to have a long resume like Blashill with as much success. You're going to probably think more so the end of the time in Detroit, which wasn't great, but a lot of coaches like Bruce Cassidy, Mike Sullivan had really rough first goes, had to wait in some cases 10, 12 years to get a second opportunity. And then when they did, they made the most of it and were much better equipped the second time around. So we'll see what happens in Chicago, but I'm optimistic that it's going to be a good hire. A couple of signings here as well. The Vancouver Canucks today announced they've signed a prospect out of Europe, Henri Ravinskis, gets a 2-year ELC. They're a Latvian-born player. They played their junior hockey in the Quebec Major Junior Hockey League, played the last couple of pro seasons in Finland as well. So, of course, they're a bit older already into the early 20s, so they get a 2-year ELC. And Tampa has signed a prospect as well. Their prospect signing is Wojciech Stachowicz, who gets a 1-year ELC, Polish-born, but has represented Germany on the international stage. So I'm guessing they must have possibly dual citizenship or perhaps this, obviously Poland's not a strong hockey nation. Maybe they had more of an opportunity to get international experience through Germany, but the German program, either way, they've played for Germany internationally. So some people think they're German. They're actually Polish-born. They are 25 years old. They've been played the last few years in the DEL in Germany. So obviously this is a couple of occasions here where they're like low risk, potentially high reward type of signings out of Europe. So we'll see what happens with those. Now, as I mentioned, lots of stuff around Toronto. They're going to continue to be one of the hot topics here. I know some people might be getting sick of hearing about the Leafs, but they are a team going through a major transition here. So they are going to occupy the headlines here a bit for the next little bit until we get more details. But we found out today, this afternoon, the Toronto Maple Leafs and MLSE announced that they parted ways with longtime president and alternate governor Brendan Shanahan. Of course, we knew there was going to be a meeting today with Shanahan and MLSE. He put out a statement as well confirming that during the meeting he was informed that his contract was not going to be renewed and that his time as team president was coming to a close. So he obviously put together a little note just kind of thanking for the opportunity and how he was a Toronto born and raised person and obviously long-time hockey career, so I was thrilled to have the opportunity to work with the Leafs. Acknowledged that when he came to Toronto in 2014 to take this job, that ultimately the goal was to win the Stanley Cup, and as much as they did a lot of good things, that they fell short of that. and certainly wished the Leafs well, and said that he felt that the current other leadership roles, including GM of Brad Treliving and Craig Berube, they thought they were, good people for those jobs. So he kind of gave them a little bit of a ringing endorsement, so to speak, on his way out. MLSE's statement has kind of left people conflicted and wondering which direction they're going to go, because Keith Pelly's statement basically said, obviously thanked Brendan for all the things he did. A lot of people don't realize and may not want to give credit where credit is due. You can say what you want about the things that didn't work out well or mistakes that were made. All these people that are presidents and GMs will have mistakes along the way. Nobody's perfect. It's impossible to not get a deal or a move here and there wrong. It's just the way the nature of sports. But in the case of Shanahan, he came into the organization in a time when they were going through utter chaos. They completely tore it right down, went through pain, got the first overall pick, got Austin Matthews, obviously, got Willie Nylander, got Mitch Marner. These guys were supposed to lead the team to the promised land. I mean, look at the Hockey News cover from all those years ago saying it's Plan the Parade was the headline, saying it's not a matter of if the Maple Leafs will win the cup of this group, but how many times, and it's never happened. So we're probably going to see, which we'll talk about here in a minute, the changing of the guard within that core four, at least some form of it this offseason as well. But Shanahan's officially out. The note from Pelly and MLSE also says that he felt that the team it needs a new voice, and ultimately this change was being made because their ultimate goal of winning a championship has not been reached, and he felt it was time for a new voice. So saying that a new voice, it makes you wonder, is there going to be a new president? Didn't really say that the position was being eliminated, although that's the feeling that a lot of reporters were kind of going with. They're also saying that there could be other changes to the front office and support staff, that they expect some things to be streamlined, which means job cuts. We know the Leafs have in the past spent a ton of money because of there not being any cap and deep pockets on support staff and all these extra people that a lot of organizations don't have normally. And a lot of that might be cut now. They want to save some money where they can. Obviously, not only that, but after 9-10 years of all these extra jobs, they're no further ahead for the championship either. So maybe they feel like they can't justify it. Hard to say. But at the end of the day, we don't know if Keith Pelly himself will take on more of a role. And if he needs the new voice, does he mean him? Does he mean somebody else? Is Brad Treliving going to be the president, or is he going to still be just the GM and report to Pelly himself as the CEO of MLSE? So, we don't know how this is all going to work, but we've had enough confirmation that Brad Treliving is not losing his job. But is he going to be considered for president, or is it going to be somebody else, or is it going to be nobody and just be Pelly overseeing things? Now, Keith Pelly is supposed to speak to the media tomorrow. That's Friday in the afternoon, 1 o'clock Eastern time. So we should get a little bit more clarity on what he plans to do and any other changes that he plans to make. But for right now, Craig Berube will remain, Brad Treliving will remain, and then it looks like the roster will be kind of what's next here that we see some changes with. So, of course, with Brendan Shanahan being officially out, we knew the day before they had given permission to the New York Islanders to speak to Shanahan about the position of a team president over there. So we already kind of speculated they wouldn't give permission if they wanted to keep him. That's pretty common knowledge here. So nobody was really shocked today when this news came down. The speculation now out of the Islanders organization is that the job of president for Shanahan is basically likely his if he wants it. He's going to have to negotiate with the Islanders to figure out how this works. But there's a lot of connections of Shanahan to this organization that make sense. I've talked before about the Lou Lamoriello connection, and obviously I know Lou is technically out, but if he's giving any kind of recommendations on his way out to ownership, we know he had a long, close relationship with Shanahan, and it's somebody he would definitely recommend. So there's that. If Lou has any influence whatsoever, I'm not sure that he does, but we know that the owners there did very much respect him, acknowledge it was time for a change, and if his opinion is valued at all, it would be a ringing endorsement for Mr. Shanahan. Now, they've already been quite down the road in GM interviews, and it sounds like they're kind of between Marc Bergevin and Matthew Darche. Some think that Bergevin is the leading contender. Some think Darche is the leading contender. Either way, they appear close to announcing who that that person is going to be. The belief is, among some, including Chris Botta, is that Shanahan would probably be willing to work with either one of these candidates as a president. Normally, you'd want to hire your president first, and then that person would have a say in hiring who's going to work below them. But because of the circumstances, it's a little bit of a different scenario. Shanahan does know both of them, and certainly appears, from what we've heard, that it would not be an issue, that they could kind of come in at the same time and form a partnership and work together here. So essentially with Shanahan, whether it's Bergevin or Darche that work with him, if that indeed works out, that could be your new kind of management squad in Long Island. There's some people, a few, that said they thought that Shanahan might be talking to them about being the president and GM himself as well. But most reputable insiders don't think that's the case, because Shanahan has never been a GM. So I don't know that he's going to want to do that now. What sense would that make? To me, I'd be quite surprised if that was the case. Now, other connections, of course, from Shanahan is the fact that he previously used to work for the league in the NHL, maintained a residence in New York. There's many that believe that now that Shanahan's time in Toronto is done, that he would probably prefer to remain in New York for family and personal reasons, that he's had a residence there the entire time. I'm not even sure that, to be honest, from what I've heard, I don't know that he lived in Toronto on any kind of a full-time basis. He probably has a residence there, but he theoretically has not really given up living in New York. So from a family, personal standpoint, it would work well. So there's that. Now, John Collins, who represents ownership here, who's basically the leader of business operations for the New York Islanders, who's a minority owner of the team representing their interest on the business operations side, and who's kind of spearheading the interviews and the personnel search here for these roles. He knows Shanahan very well as well. One of his former jobs, he was the COO of the NHL. So when Shanahan worked for the league, they would have worked together, and apparently do know each other quite well and have a good relationship. So there's also that. And you know that if the league, because teams sometimes ask the league for their opinion on some of the people they're hiring, he would also get a glowing reference from them. So all signs point to the fact that he's probably going to have this job if he wants it. If Shanahan does not turn out to be the new president of the Islanders, I think it's going to be because he's chosen to either take a break, or that's just not something he wants to do right now. But from what everybody's saying, it sure sounds like a very likely scenario that we see Shanahan become the president and either Darche or Bergevin become the GM. That's how things sound. Now, there's also some that wonder about Rob Blake. Rob Blake, also a really good close friend of Brendan Shanahan, recently let go, well, mutually parted ways, you could say, of the former GM of the Los Angeles Kings. Could he have some kind of role in the organization? Maybe it's an advisory role. It doesn't even know for sure, and it may not be something that happens right away, but there is some that wonder if Blake could get involved. Something a little bit less time-consuming, a little bit less stressful, a little bit less, day-to-day, if you will, than he had in Los Angeles. So doesn't mean it's going to happen, but there are some out there because of the relationship that wonder, is it a possibility? So there's all that. So look for the Islanders to probably make some decisions over the next couple of days. I would suspect that either tomorrow or into the weekend, maybe like a couple of days, we're probably going to get some sort of announcement. But it's going to boil down to a negotiation between Shanahan and the Islanders is what it sounds like. Now, a lot of people are already talking. I brought this up as well. This was just my personal opinion. But we know that there's a couple of them on prominent UFAs in the Leafs. And we keep hearing Mitch Marner is likely not going back to Toronto. Lots of connections of him to this organization as well, which could include Shanahan if he goes there. Really good close friend of Matt Martin, of course, who would highly recommend the team, lives in the area around the team. I don't think he's going to play anymore, but still, would the New York Islanders be a franchise, you would say, a little quieter than Toronto? Yeah, there's most teams in the NHL would be a little quieter than Toronto. New York, I think, is a big enough city, even where the Islanders, typically play and where the players typically live, that I think he could have a different lifestyle. So, I'm not saying he's going there, but there's going to be a lot of people that are wondering of the connection. So could Shanahan's influence help them. I mean, they've already got the first overall pick in the draft, which is also an attractive piece for anybody looking to run a new franchise like this. And then you throw in the possibility of getting a free agent like Marner. They could turn things around very quickly there. So anyway, just something to watch. We'll hear more about that in the coming weeks. We know everything that we've heard about Mitch Marner, because there has been a lot of talk about him today as well from a variety of NHL media, saying that all indications are that he's 100% going to test the market. Doesn't mean he's completely 100% closed the door on Toronto, but that he wants to hear what other teams have to offer, and he's going to probably be factoring in money and lifestyle, because he's had, quite a time in Toronto. And I think by the sounds of things, from people that claim to have inside knowledge of what those around him are saying, that he's leaning towards wanting, just to kind of get away from the noise, as they call it, and away from all the stress, and kind of go into a little bit of a, fly under the radar, quieter type of hockey market. So I don't know exactly what that means, but clearly Marner appears to be wanting a fresh start. So I think I've heard Pierre LeBrun, Elliot Friedman, a bunch of them today said that they felt like very, very, very likely that he leaves. Of course, nobody's willing to say guarantee you he's gone. And I think he won't completely close the door on Toronto until he has a chance to talk to other teams on July 1st. But there's always a possibility that, they make him an offer and he just says, I can't refuse this, and I'm willing to put up with everything that I was saying I didn't like before for this kind of money. I don't know. But is that good for the Leafs? I just don't see it happening. I really don't. So I think more than likely Marner does leave, and because of all the connections, the Islanders will be a team you hear a lot about. Whether or not it happens, hard to say. Now, Toronto also, according to Dave Pagnotta, could be looking at another New York player on a different New York franchise, and that's the New York Rangers, talking about the fact that veteran Chris Kreider is expected to be a player that the Rangers do pursue moving. We know his name was out there, that Chris Drury made it known to all the other NHL teams during last season that he was a name and a player that he was willing to move. Obviously, there was some degree of trade protection in his contract. We know the Leafs are likely going to be kind of retooling this roster a bit. I don't expect them to take any kind of big steps back or anything. They're going to try to extend this opportunity to have a window that's open to win, but they're going to want to, obviously if Marner goes out, they're going to be trying to bring in another type of player to, or multiple players to try to, rejig this team. And Kreider's a fast, big body kind of forward who can drive the net, might be more conducive to helping them win in the playoffs. So Dave Pagnotta, the fourth period, was suggesting that there could be a fit there between the two clubs for a potential Kreider to Toronto type of trade. Now, the Rangers are also in a predicament where they don't have a lot of cap space. As we talked about in the Rangers offseason plan video, they're really tight to the cap, considering what they have for internal business, and that doesn't give them any opportunity to go out and really do much else, be a trade or a free agency, to make the team better. So they're going to want to shed one or two veteran contracts to give them some more flexibility. And with all the talk around Kreider since early part of last season, it makes sense that he might be a guy that goes. Now, whether or not Toronto ends up being the team, I don't know. But based on what they're going to be looking for, it does make some sense. But again, we'll have to see how everything shakes out. They might have to retain money, and that could get complicated. I don't think if the Leafs made that kind of move that they would be giving much of anything off the roster. There would be more of a case that they're probably willing to, trying to give them some like picks and prospects, because they're going to want to probably be using the space that they gain from potentially Marner or Tavares departing, whereas the Rangers are going to probably want the cap space too. So we'll see what happens if they could hook up or not. But that's been a busy day. The Leafs and Islanders, I think, are going to be teams that really generate a lot of headlines here over the next few days, so stay tuned. We'll keep you up to date with all the news, rumors, and analysis on all 32 NHL teams. Thanks for watching. I'll catch you next time.